I'm Dr. Rick Wilson from Rice University, and this is Politricks. What happens when people of different racial, ethnic, or religious backgrounds brush up against one another? Social scientists have two distinct theories about what should happen. Those who side with the contact hypothesis find evidence that exposure to different people leads to tolerance and acceptance. Meanwhile, those who side with the threat hypothesis find evidence that exposure leads to hostility because one group feels that the other will politically and economically displace them. Finding a clear answer to exposure is difficult because it's hard to control and manipulate when people are exposed to new groups. A recent paper appearing in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science by political scientist Ryan Enos provides a novel test between these two hypotheses. Dr. Enos carries out a controlled experiment in which treated groups are exposed to people who are different. The experiment's relatively simple. A number of commuter rail stations from the greater Boston area were chosen. Trains arrive at different times during the morning commute, so two trains were chosen at each station. One was assigned to the control and the other to the treated group. Passengers almost always catch the same train at the same time every day, and indeed this was the case for this study. 5 days before the treatment, subjects waiting for the train on the platform were invited to complete a web-based survey. Among the questions asked was whether the number of immigrants from a specific country allowed into the U.S. should be increased or decreased. This is an initial measure of the subject's openness to members of an outgroup. There are several treatment groups, and I'm only going to mention one here. Dr. Enos hired pairs of Confederates who knew nothing about the experiment. These were members of the outgroup, and they were instructed to go to the train station and stand there until the train left. They did this for 3 days. While waiting, they were given no instructions about what to do. Sometimes they spoke among themselves in their native language. Sometimes they answered questions by others on the platform. Sometimes they did nothing. After the experiment ended, those who filled out the web-based survey were recontacted, asked new questions, and then asked the same questions about immigration. Their responses were then compared. Those in the control condition showed no difference. However, those exposed to the outgroup were much more likely to want to limit immigrants to the U.S. By simply exposing a homogeneous group of people to a different group, attitudes changed, as if people were threatened. This study helps strengthen what we know about intergroup conflict. Seeing people who are not of your own group, even as few as 2 outgroup members, is regarded as threatening. This is reflected in a change in attitudes and is to the detriment of the outgroup. It may be the case that with increased diversity in society, people will become more tolerant. However, the study is not optimistic. In the short run, the dominant group is more likely to feel threatened than to be tolerant. Well, read the study for yourself. It's important for providing evidence about the threat hypothesis.